Okay, in this tutorial we are going to animate a flour sack jumping off of a cube and splatting on the ground. So what I'm going to do is go up to Project, select New, and then I have to import my models, so I'm going to say Import Model, and go to navigate to my Models folder, say Cube, Flour Sack, and the ground plane. You don't need the ground plane. In my default choreography I don't have a ground, so I need to put one in. So let's open those three. They'll show up here. So I've got my flour sack. So I've got all three of these models in here now. And then double click on choreographies to create a new choreography. And it will give you this right here. So now I need to grab my ground plane. You don't need to do that, but I'm just going to grab it and then size it up really big here. There. Okay, and then I'm going to turn it off so I don't touch it. So now I need to grab the cube, bring that in, and then also bring the flour sack in, just by clicking the model and dragging it on top of choreography 1. Okay, so now I've got them both in there. I want to select my cube and go to my side view, hit N to go into navigate, and move it back a little ways, and then hit S to scale it up, and just grab the corner and scale it up pretty high. Do it about here. Okay. And then once I've done that, let's click the hand in your project workspace so that it turns off the ability to choose it. Now if I click here, I can't choose it. Okay. So now that we've got our flour sack, the first thing we want to do is we want to animate the model moving, and then we'll do the bone animation after that. So let's grab the model here at frame 0. We want him to be up here on top of the cube. So I'm just going to place him right here. Zoom in so I can see him, make sure his feet are touching it. Okay. So I want him there at 0. Frame 20 I want him to squish down. So all I'm going to do is set a keyframe by hitting up and then down with the arrow keys on my keyboard. So I just set a keyframe there. Frame 30, I want to set a keyframe. It's going to be the middle of his jump. So I'm going to put him up about right here. Make sure you don't have your snap to grid on. Okay, so put him about right there. And then at frame 40, I'm going to put him down here on the ground. Just put right there. Okay. So now at frame 0, 20, 40, or 20, 30, 40. Let's move him out a little more so he gets a little more distance on his jump. So I'm going to go to frame 40, just hit N and then drag him out a little bit. Let's look at the graph. You can see here. This is his translation in the Z. So I want to move it out a little bit here so it looks like he's not just going up and coming straight down, but that he's actually traveling forward. So this is our this is our Y translation. This right here, the blue line, is our Z rotation or Z translation. This is our Y, and then this is the X. Okay. So you can see here, so he just lands, and then I want to go to frame 50 and just push up down to set another keyframe, and then 60 to set another keyframe. Now at frame 19, if I zoom out here and I click on him, I don't want him to go through the ground, go off, and then hit the ground and go through the ground. So I actually want to copy frame 40 and go to frame 41 and paste it, and then copy frame 19, or excuse me, frame 20, hit Control C or copy that, and then paste it there. So I copied frame 40 and pasted it here, and then I copied frame 20 and pasted it here, and that gave us a hold like this. You can do that, or what you can do, let me just show you another method of doing this, is to select these points here, right click on them and say interpolation method, hold, and then these ones here, right click on them, interpolation method, hold. That will flatten them out so it'll come straight in here. Okay. Alright, so now what we can do is we can see how he stays there and then he jumps off and comes down. But we want him to take off. We don't want him to kind of ease into his jump. We want him to take off. So let's choose this CP and say interpolation method, or choose all these. Right click, say interpolation method linear. That doesn't do exactly what we want it to. So right click on them, interpolation method default. Okay. So let's go to frame 25 and then click on your object and hit up down, and then go to frame 35 and hit up down also. Now I can select this or these CPs here and adjust the bias so it's a nice curve. That, and then I can go ahead and I can move them up so I get a good curve. I want this to be the height, but I want it to kind of slow down as it comes up. So I'm going to move this one up and then use the bias to smooth it out. There we go. So now we've got a takes off and then falls quickly. Okay. So I think we've got all the keys set for the object. We don't need any rotation, all we need is translation. So I've got this and it looks pretty good. One thing I might want to do is take these and move them up using the arrow keys just slightly so that I get a little more distance on my jump. So it doesn't look like if I don't do that, it looks like he's taking off and then he's falling like this. The way I want him to do it is to take off and have a nice arc that has him come out like this. If I do this, it just looks like there's very little inertia behind him or very little weight behind him. So I'm going to use this one. So I have him come out a little further. Looks pretty good. Okay, so we've got the object animation done. Now we need to go into bones mode or skeletal mode and do that animation. So while we're here at frame 10, I'm going to go into skeletal mode, and then you can see that I've got these three bones that I want to animate. So I'm just going to hit up and down and then rotate it just slightly and rotate it back. Up, down, and then rotate it slightly and rotate it back. Up, down, and then rotate it slightly and rotate it back. The reason why I do that is that way it sets a keyframe for both rotations and translations on 0, and that way I can just hit, I can do whatever I need to hit the create keyframe, and it will create automatic translation and rotation keys. So, okay, so we have him here, sitting here, ready to take off from his jump. And at frame 0, we don't want him to do anything. At frame 20, we want him crouching down. So let's rotate him back a little bit here. Have him crouch a bit. Okay. So now going to from frame 0 to 20, I made sure not to translate this bone because I want his feet to stay in place. Okay. Okay, so I want the feet to stay put, so I don't move that, I just rotate it. So let's go down to 20, and then at frame 30, let's make sure we've got keyframes made on this. Now, while I'm talking about keyframes, if you look down here on the on your bottom, on your bottom tab here, all these buttons here can tell you, all these ones right here will tell you what you're going to be keying. If they're pressed down, that means a keyframe will be set on those things. This is translation, this is scaling, this is rotation, this is any sort of constraints, this is muscle animation, this is bias animation, these are your pose sliders, and this is everything else. So if you don't want something keyed, like say I don't want constraints keyed, I'm going to uncheck this box, and then I'll just have translation, scale, and rotation keyed. Now these buttons right here, this button right here is to key only a single bone at a time. So it would just be this bone. If I hit the create keyframe here, it would just be this bone. This one right here is for a chain. So if these were a chain of bones, if I clicked on this one, it would key all that chain down that chain. And then this one here is key the entire anything in the choreography. So any bone that's in the model will be keyframed if I have that clicked down. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just click this one so I can create keyframes just on a single bone and not on everything. So at frame 20, I'm just going to click this bone and hit force keyframe, click this bone, hit force keyframe, and click this bone and hit force keyframe. That will automatically give it rotation, translation keyframes. Okay. So now let's go to the height of our jump, frame 30. Frame 30, let's have him stretch out. and while you're doing this, this bone is the model bone, and this is the center of the model right here. And so I want it to I want him to average so that he's stretched out. I don't want to put him over here. I want to make sure that when I have him stretched out, he's somewhat like this, so that it looks right with the movement of the model bone. So let's do that. Let's grab these, and we'll pull him over here. I want him to look. I don't want him to look stretched out, but I want him to look like he's got his back arched. So I'm gonna do this. Put this one up. Rotate it back. Maybe pull this one up a little more. See, I need to move these forward so that they're with the model bone better. Okay. Move this up and tilt it down just slightly. There we go. Okay, so let's force a keyframe for that one, force a keyframe for that one, and force a keyframe for this one. Okay, so now if I zoom out, he stands there, and then he jumps off, and he gets to the height of his jump, and then he goes down and he hits the ground right here at frame 40. So what I want to do is I want to grab these bones, and I want to give him a little bit of sag here, so I'm going to rotate this bone down. I don't want the geometry to go through the floor, but I want him to look like he's sagging down just slightly. Okay. Alright. So let's click on this and force the keyframe. This, just to make sure. I already keyed both rotations and translations, but just to make sure. So now let's zoom out and watch him here. He goes, takes off, and then hits the ground. Okay, so now let's go to our in-betweens. Frame 20 is where he takes off. Frame 25 is in between. He looks fine doing that because he's in the process of stretching out. But once he's on his way down, he doesn't. At frame 35, you don't want him to. Or at frame 40, you don't want him to be laying down before he hits the ground. And at frame 21, you don't want him to be taking off or still crouched when he starts taking off. So let's go to first of all, let's go to frame 22. Okay. 21, one frame is kind of too much of a snap. And so I'm going to go to frame 22, and I'm going to key this bone right here. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to frame 20, and I'm going to go up to the rulers, and I'm going to set a guide where he's at. So that's the base. That's right where the base of his bone is at. Okay, so then I'm going to go to frame 22 and drag it back and put it right there at the base. Okay, and then I'll rotate him just a little bit so he looks like he's taking off. Like that. Okay, so now at frame 21, I've got this little, how he goes through the ground a little bit, so I'm going to go to frame 21 and then I'm going to select this bone and put him back right there where he was. So now his feet stay put when he jumps. Okay. And then he takes off. Alright, so let's actually give him a little more. Let's go to frame 23 and keep his feet there too. So let's stretch this out. Put it right there. That'll give him a little bit of lag. Stretches out and then he gets up to his feet lag behind him. Okay. Alright, so we have our takeoff done in the middle. Now let's go to frame 39, and what he's going to be doing is going to be doing exactly what he was doing here. So what we can do is select this bone here at frame 30, hit copy, go to frame 39, hit paste. Select this bone, go to frame 30, copy, and go back and hit paste. And then go back to frame 30, copy the top bone, go to frame 39 and hit paste. So now he's in this still stretched out phase. But right before he hits the ground, we want him to be really stretched out. So let's really stretch him out here. Let's bring this way up, pull this out, pull his butt kind of up in the air here. Okay. So now what we've got is he's at the height of his jump, and then as he goes down, let's pull this up a little bit, rotate him. Just trying to get a good look of what he's going to look like when he's stretched out. Let's do it about right there. Let's kick this back just a little bit more. Okay. So he's going to get to the height of his jump just fine, then he's going to stretch out as he comes down, and then he's going to hit at frame 40, smack, like that. Okay. So let's go to 39. Just select each one of these and force a keyframe. Now, they should already have keyframe data on them, but I'm just going to force them on it anyways. Okay, so at frame 40, it doesn't need to do anything. Okay, so we've got the jump in there, pretty good, and the bone animation along with the skeletal animation. Now we need to do some squash and stretch. And right here we've done stretching. Right here he's back to his normal, and then here we've done stretching. Or sorry, squashing here, and then normal, and then stretching, and then right here. But we want him to splat on the ground, flat, and then come back up. So at frame 40, go into choreography mode by hitting the blue horn up at the top. And then hit S to go into scale mode. Go back to the very beginning, and under scale, you see right here, at frame 0, type in 100, 100, and 100. Okay, and then at frame 40 is where we want him to squash. So at frame 39, I'm going to keep it at 100. So I'm just going to select the number and hit enter, enter, and enter, and that sets a keyframe. Okay, and then at frame 40, we want him to squish down in the Y and then out in the Z and the X. So I just hit T and I tumbled out. If you hit 1 and then T, you can tumble out. Let's go into shaded mode here real quick. So that's the Y, and then in the Z, or the X, we want him splat this way, and the X, we want him this way too. So this is the Z, and this is the X. So he keeps his volume. He still looks like the flour sack. He's just way flat. Okay. So if you look now on our scale, these bow out. So what we want to do is go to frame 0, or go to frame 0. Select under your transform. You want to hit scale right here, so it shows all your X, Y, and Z scale. Select this point just by drag selecting, and then go to interpolation method, hold. That'll flatten that out so he won't bow, or the graph won't bow. Excuse me. So he jumps off and then he goes splat. Okay. Now at frame 50, we want him to be back at 100%. So just type in your values. Okay. So if I now go to scale, you'll see how he goes splat and then comes back to 100%. And then go to frame 50. Select these CPs or these points here. Hit copy, and then go over to 60 and hit paste. Okay. So now we should have. Let's play our animation here. Okay, now one thing is that he's crouching down really slow. Let's get him to have kind of a breath and then crouch down, okay? So I'm going to select him, or deselect him, select him again. Let's go to frame 0, hit copy, and then go to frame 10 and hit paste, and then change these ones right here, say interpolation method default, okay? What that will do is it will hold from frame 0 to 10. Oh, sorry about that. That's in translate. I shouldn't have done it there. Let's just delete those here. Okay. So now we're back to where we were. We actually just want on the model bone. So click on the model bone here. Object properties, transform. Okay. I just want on bones. I don't want on the model bone. Model bone stays put. So on bones, on those bones, I'm going to select frame 0. Actually, I need to go into full skeletal mode. So I'm going to go to frame 0. Let's go to single bone, just so I don't key anything I don't need to. Let's go to 0. Select that bone, go to frame 0, copy, frame 10, paste. This bone here, copy 0, paste it on frame 10, and this bone here, copy 0, paste it to frame 10. Now you see you get these little bows in the graph. Well, what that does, it gives him a little breath, and then he shrinks down. Now you can do that much more extreme if you want to. You can go to 5, and you can go like this. Let's grab this bone and keep it there. Let's actually rotate it just slightly. Let's grab this bone, stretch him out a little here, and then grab the top bone, move it up, and roll it back. So it looks like he's taking a big breath to get ready. So he goes, woo. Okay. And let's have him hold it for just a second. We do that by selecting these keyframes for each bone, move them back one, select these, it's going to transform so we get all of them, move them back one. I'm going to make sure there's a translation on here too. Okay, so now if I hit transform, let's go back one, two. So this one, those are back, and then this one, let's select everything here and move it back. Now select all of them, hit copy, and then go to frame 6 and hit paste on each of these. So go here, select those, copy, go to frame 6, paste, and this one. Let's go here, select these, go to frame 6 and paste. Now that gave us a little bit of a hold, so he goes up and holds, and then he comes back down. It's not so fast. And I can take these and move them, you know, I can go like this if I want to, and that way he holds it a little longer and then shrinks down. Let's move these out here all the way here. Okay. So I'm just going to move these keyframes. Got those. Let's move these back here. All I'm doing here is I'm playing with the keyframes and seeing what my timing is going to be. Let's take these, move them back, and these move them forward. Okay, in the middle, I just want to make sure that these are on the right keyframe. Okay, so now we gave him a little breath there. The computer will do it on its own, but by doing what we just did, you can just play with those and see what happens. Give him a breath here. Let's go to our top bone and just turn him back a little further, copy those keyframes, and then go to here and paste them. Just takes a big breath, crouches down, and goes. Okay. Then at 60, let's create a key for each of these. But let's copy frame 60 and paste it at frame 41. Okay. Oops, didn't get all of them. Let's go frame 60, copy, and 41 paste. There we go. Okay. If you're seeing what I'm doing, if I hit just translate, I only get the keys for translation in here. If I hit scale, I get scale, and rotate, I only get rotate. If you hit transform, it shows all of them. So when you're copying keyframes, you want to be in the transform right here, so it shows you everything. So let's go to the middle button, go to transform. Let's go to 60, or let's go to 60 here and force a keyframe, and we'll go to 40, copy it, and or no, excuse me, 60, copy it. So select them, copy, go to frame 41, paste. Same thing with the base. Let's go to frame 60, force a keyframe, select those, copy them, go to frame 41 and paste. There we go. Okay, so we've got our animation done. Now we want to animate the camera real quick, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go to my top view, and I'm going to go to frame, make sure I'm on frame 0, go to my camera, and I'm going to drag my camera over here, and then point the camera by clicking on the end here and dragging to my object. Now if I hit 1 on the numpad, I'll see what I'm looking at. I'm going to go up to camera in the objects folder and change my focal length to 35, so it's a much more wide angle lens. I'm going to go into my side view, take my camera and move it down so it's real close to the ground, but not quite on the ground. Okay. Go back into 1 and you can see I'm kind of far away from it, so I'm going to move it in. about here and grab the end and click and drag and point it to the object. Okay, so here's my view right now, but what I need to do is rotate it. So go into my side view, 6 on the numpad, hit R to rotate, and grab the red one and rotate it up. Now go to 1 and you can see what we're looking at. 1 on the numpad will take you to this view. Okay, and now that we've got that, I want to rotate it just a little bit more to the, so that my view, if I go back to here, I want him to be jumping out into space this way. And so I want him to start kind of in this area of the camera view so that my eye tends to go towards this area because I can see the action that's going to come. So let's move the camera just slightly. Let's go to our top view and hit R for rotate. Grab the green one and just go slightly over. Go back to our view. That's where I want him, right there. Okay. Now, so at frame 0, he stays there. And I'm on the while I'm on the camera, I want to select this the whole model right here. Okay. But I want to make sure I'm in the right action, so I'm going to be in this choreography action here. Okay, so frame 0, I'm going to click on the camera, and I see I've got a keyframe for it. So I'm going to copy that, go to frame 20, hit paste, go to frame 30, and I want to rotate him up this way. So I'm going to use the hotkeys, which is with a 3-button mouse. I hold down Shift and I push down on my middle mouse scroll button, and I can just position my camera how I want it. And then I'm going to say force a keyframe. Because I have the camera highlighted, it will only cause a keyframe to be created for the camera. Okay, so here's my takeoff. And then at frame 40, I'm going to use the same thing. Hold down the Shift button, or the Shift key, and push down your middle mouse button and drag, and you can rotate your camera. And then hit force keyframe. Okay. So now I've got this view from the camera. Now one thing that's happening is my camera is leading the action. And I don't necessarily want that to happen. I want it to kind of trail behind as if you're chasing after the object. Okay. So I'm going to offset this one just slightly. I'm going to grab these keyframes and move them over just slightly. So I'm just behind him a little bit. Okay. And then 40, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to move them over a couple frames. So he goes up and we see him, and he comes down and he hits, but the camera trails him. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to select my camera again. I'm actually going to take these and go a couple frames up because I want to follow him. All I'm doing here is I'm checking to see what my camera is going to look like. So my camera is following him. Goes out for a second and splats, and then we come down. So I actually want to bring these back just a couple of frames. Boom. We want to see him splat. That's pretty good. Let's go back one more and see what happens. There we go. Okay, so we follow him up, follow him down, and see him splat. Okay. So now I'm going to take the keyframes at frame 40, select those, hit copy, go to frame 50 and paste them, and then paste them at 60. Okay, so that's good. So let's do a little bit of a camera shake now. So what I want to do is when a camera shakes, it translates more than it rotates. It doesn't necessarily rotate, it just shakes kind of up and down. So what I want to do is I want to go at frame 41. He hits the ground, and that's gonna hit the ground hard, so that's gonna make my camera jump up. So at 41, I'm gonna hold down Control, use my middle mouse button, and click and hold, and just drag up slightly. Okay, and then I'm gonna go to frame 42, and click and drag down slightly. You can see what I'm doing with this right here. This is my Y translation. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the next frame and hold down Control and go up. And go to the next frame, Control that, drag down. I'm just creating a bzzz. Okay, so let's actually go into this. Set our translate. You can see our Y translation here. Let's click on this. Whoops, I didn't want to get the bias. Zoom in on it so we can see it better. Click and drag it up. Let's get a big result here. Okay. Boom. Okay, so let's do this just a little bit too. Drag these down, this up, this one down, there we go. And this one will just create the keyframes for it right there. Boom. Okay. Boom. So we get this nice big shake. Now these don't have to be this high. I mean, I can bring them down. I can make it not quite as big. Let's do it. Let's just do that. Okay. So let's zoom out here, play our whole animation, see how it looks. Boom. Ah! Okay, so let's drag this out. This will tell me how far I'm going to be playing. Let's just play to frame 20 or 75. There we go. So it jumps, comes down. And you can see the camera at the very beginning doesn't hold. So let's do this. On all of our rotations and everything, grab these frames at 0, just click transform over here, grab the frames at 0, right click and say interpolation method, hold. So now it holds perfectly still, and then when it starts to move, he moves. Boom. Okay. Now you can't see the camera shake here, but I just want a little bit of effect so that when we render it out, we get that bit of a camera shake. And I can stretch these out. I can say, you know, take frame 50 and put it at frame 55. Take this one, move it over. 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 This one here. That. There we go. And then select the very end keyframes, copy those, paste them out at 75. Okay, so let's do a test render. And I'll pause it while I do this. You go up to render to file right here, click it, bring up this box. I want to say it's a QuickTime movie. Format, you can set the format, I'll probably set it to Sorensen 3, hit OK. File name, I'm going to save it to my renders folder. Just call it Splat. Okay. The range, I'm going to go to frame 75 and leave it at VGA. Options, I'm going to set it to final and have everything off but shadows. Okay. Then I'm going to hit OK and I'll pause it, and then I'll come back when it's done. Okay, so finished rendering. Let's go up to right here, play animation file, and open it. And in my renders folder there's splat.mov. I'm going to open it here and see what it looks like. So it looks pretty good. Our camera shake might be a little fast. Let's see here. So he goes up, takes a breath. We may want more time before he takes his breath, so we could slide everything down and then let him take his breath, crouch down, and then go. But it looks like he's stretching pretty well and splats out pretty good. Looks like his splat, though, it's almost too short. With the camera shake, we don't see it as well. So I can go back in and I can keyframe the size of the model bone. When I squished it down in the Y, I can copy that keyframe and have it hold that for a little bit. Okay, so there we go. So I'm going to close this, close down my render, and I can see how, when I click on him, go into choreography mode, you can see how the scale, let's just go to scale real quick. Model bone, transform, scale. Okay. I want him to hold this splat for a little bit. Let's select these keyframes at 40, hit copy, go to frame 45. Let's actually go to frame 50, paste them, and then go to frame 60, copy those at 60, go back to 55 and paste them. So he goes splat and keeps and stays splatted for a little bit, and then he slowly comes back. Let's take these frames at 60 and move them out to frame 65, just so we get a little bit more resolution there. And then select the ones at 65, copy them, and go to frame 75 and paste them. So now he comes down, splat, and keeps the splat for a minute, and then comes back. That way we see him a little bit better. Then I'd render it out and check it again and just kind of keep tweaking things. So that's how we animate the flour sack jumping and splatting and all that. And hopefully this is helpful.